The temperature is nice and warm in the Boiling Point podcast studio, so come on in, get cozy, and let's enjoy the conversation. We empower leaders through thoughtful discussions to positively impact our world. Our host, Dave Vale, founder and CEO of Vision Coaching, Inc., is highlighting how we can thrive in business communities. Our conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, and inspirational storytellers are shining a spotlight on empowerment. Joining Dave this week is our special guest host, Emily Roger. Let's join the conversation with Dave and Emily.
Hey, Dave. So I love that we are in Hemmings House headquarters. Thank you to Greg for letting us record here today. And between you and I, we could not get any of the audio or technical stuff sorted out. So instead of us both sitting in this beautiful boardroom, I am in here all by myself. And you are sitting
I'm in a closet.
Another room, in a closet. And we're both just using the old school MacBook mics. And but here we are in a full production company.
And we traveled from places to be here to be in the same boardroom, physically distanced, of course, and socially distanced or whatever, but we couldn't figure it out. And hopefully by, our third or fourth interview, because we do a bunch of them together, we'll figure that out. And you have the good light. I know that people will know. And me, not so much.
But you tried, you tried today to get the good light, and
I need the good light. I need,
you know what, Dave? If you want the good light, you got to show up early to take this seat.
Okay, you know what? I don't need the good light. That's great. So
I am so excited for today's episode. It is my friend, very good friend of mine, Phil Jewell, who I met through Railroads University. He is a certified executive coach. And it's funny because my first memory of seeing the name Phil Jewell was at the beginning of Railroads. We do the SDI
strength
reports, and all of our results come back, and then all of the students, everyone's result is on it, so we could see each other. And so there's the green, the red, the blue, the hub. So Emily Roger is as far red could be, to the point that I was embarrassed.
What's red for people that
red is competitive. But right next to Emily was Phil Jewell. And I thought, who is this guy? And so we initially connected over our personality traits, I guess.
Shared traits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'll let Phil welcome to the Boiling Point podcast.
Thank you.
I told you to dress up, to look presentable, to not embarrass me, because I was the one who suggested you come on.
Exactly, and this is my best shirt, so I hope it's good enough.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And then there was also something about potty language or a potty mouth or something like that mentioned in an email as well. So I'm hoping that we get to hear you in all your glory, buddy.
You don't want to go through all of it.
Yeah, well, we can put an explicit sign on this if we need to when we send it out. So what made you think of Phil as a guest, Emily?
Phil is probably one of the most passionate people to speak on the topic of leadership. Okay. It is his energy level just rises when he speaks about leadership and servant leadership. And he has an incredible story of coming from British military, leading, and to now coaching, and with his company, Impact Leadership. And so with that, Phil, I am going to let you introduce yourself, because you probably don't want the listeners to hear my introduction of you.
That is, I love it, Emily. Thank you. And that is awesome. It's interesting, hearing you mention and you recognize my passion for leadership. It kind of, like you mentioned about the red, kind of makes you cringe a little bit. And sometimes when I hear that, it makes me cringe a little bit, because sometimes at the end of the day, I'm a passionate person. And one thing I'm learning on my own journey is to own all of that. You know what I mean? Just to own it. And that's certainly something that I haven't owned over the last decade or so. So I'm very passionate about the subject of leadership, not at all because I talk from any sort of pedestal, like I'm any sort of expert in it whatsoever. because I've had a lot of failures and a lot of, real life leadership experiences. I'm very passionate about kind of giving back, you know what I mean? And trying to pass on some of my learnings, which honestly have come through failures, you know? So it's actually, I was talking to somebody the other day and I'm like, oh, you know, because you're a leadership expert. And I was like, no, I'm not a leadership expert. I don't know what I am. And at the moment, I think on LinkedIn, I said like leadership specialist. I don't even like the word specialist, but it's like kind of specialize in it, you know what I mean? But I'm not at all any sort of expert or, you know, forward thinker or anything like that. But I'm very, very passionate about it. In fact, it is the one subject which lights me up. And I think it's because, like many of us, I've experienced the effects of very good leadership and the effects of not so good leadership, you know?
Well, tell us about that. Like what, you know, and it's interesting to hear your military background and then, you know, now, and I'm assuming you own the company, you're an entrepreneur at this stage of the game. And you don't hear that a lot in terms of the career trajectory that you've taken. I'd love to kind of get a sense of how that happened and, you know, what, you know, part of
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, and everyone's story is unique and everyone's story is different. And mine, you know, it's definitely different. And, you know, I guess, I've taken a leap of faith. You know, I've left the comfort and security that comes with maybe a salaried 9 to 5 and followed my passion. And, you know, I'm so happy and fulfilled for, you know, what I get to do every day. But it's interesting. Why did I take the path? Almost because I was stubborn and wanted to do something different than everyone else seemed to be doing. I had no connection to the British Army whatsoever. I didn't know anybody in it. It was just, I liked adventure. I liked doing things different. I just didn't see myself going in a suit corporate job or whatever it was. And so, you know, I applied for the British Army and then they said, oh, you seem to have some sort of leadership traits. And I was like, oh, whatever. You know, I'm, you know, cause Sandhurst, I don't know if you've heard of Sandhurst, Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst is where I was trained for 12 months. And, you know, it's where royalty goes. It's where some of the leaders, the kind of well-known lead.
Where's that?
Sorry? It's in London. So it's just outside of London in UK, the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So it's where, like, you know, like Prince Harry and Prince William, which I was actually there at the same time. I'm not claiming I know them or anything like that. I'm just saying we're in the same cohort of it. But, so it's where a lot of people go from a lot of different backgrounds. But so I don't know why I took that path. I think I just was stubborn and I wanted an adventure. But, you know, soon after taking that path, it really made me realize that I was serving a higher purpose. And servant leadership is the motto of Sandhurst, like servant leadership. And I'll never forget, I think it was like week one, and it's, you know, 52-week course, but week one or whatever, you know, it was like middle of the night or early morning, whatever it was. And, you know, I structured liners up and they literally said, you know, the only reason you are here is to potentially have the privilege of leading soldiers one day. And so very early on, it was ingrained in me that a leader's role is a privileged role to lead those they're lucky and fortunate enough to lead. And it's not the other way around. There are some organizations and some people and some institutions that get told on day one, you're the best of the best. Like, you're going to be our leaders. You're the best of the best. That's why you're here. We were given the opposite message. We were like, you're the worst of the worst. We have soldiers who are like absolutely outstanding, and we may let you lead them one day. And that's kind of, that's been ingrained in me kind of, and I've taken that through my whole sort of kind of leadership philosophy, you know? So that's kind of, you know, the servant leadership type model I really, really believe in.
Well, and with that, like, what is servant leadership? Because is that only in the military?
No. And I think it's, I'm going to get the name wrong. Ken Blanchard, I think, who came up with did a lot of the research and academic kind of aspects behind servant leadership, you know, I think in the 60s or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff out there about, you know, kind of what it is in the theoretical sort of perspective. And the reason I'm kind of hesitating there is because sometimes none of that really sticks to me and I can't, you know, articulate it tangibly. For me, servant leadership is you truly believe you are there to serve others. And that's what servant leadership is. You're a servant first, leader second. Like, you want to be a leader, or you became a leader because you want to help others and you want to serve others. That's why you became a leader. You didn't become a leader for all the other reasons that some people may become leaders. So, you know, it's that I am here to serve those I have the privilege of leading. And that doesn't mean always saying yes to them and giving them everything they want. You know, it means being a good follower as well. And followership is a massive part of leadership, you know, and you know, I always viewed it as like a big chain, and I'm just a link in that chain. And the chain gets pulled either side. That's my team wanting to go in this direction, but, strategic sort of headquarters want to go in another direction. Well, my job is to try and be that link in the chain and not bend too much either way, because if I do, it would break,
It's funny, going back to the idea that, the best of the best, and that's why you became the leader. And in fact, I mean, some of the stuff we're seeing, like if you just, at any level, this would apply, but let's just take, the best salesperson all of a sudden becomes the sales manager or the general sales manager, I'm thinking in car dealerships. And that the person who has the ability and the competency and the knowledge to sell a lot of cars isn't necessarily, often is exact opposite of what going to be successful in that leadership position. But there's this, and I see it in engineers. I see it in all these different things, and in a way, it's a good thing, because they call sometimes coaching companies to come help you.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that part of it, but I'm always surprised, right? It sounds like the British military got it right.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And you name any industry, and it was like whoever was the top performer, the best architect, the best salesperson, like you said, all of a sudden they became an overnight leader, and all of a sudden they were now doing a role completely different that they were given no training or development for, that in my mind is its own profession. Now, it's not a profession in terms of there's, accreditation and all this sort of stuff, but absolutely, for me, leadership is its own domain with its own skill set. And you need to be given the awareness and tools and time to develop into that role. And that's why I'm driven passionately, because I feel for leaders who get a bad rep, because it's not their fault. They've been thrown into that position without the training and skills to do it. We would never expect a salesperson to be a great salesperson, or any trade or any profession to be good at that without the training and skills. And yet we think that we can do that for leaders, and we absolutely can't. And kind of going back to, I agree, I'm very biased towards the British Army, and they get it right, but I mean, they get a lot of things not right as well. I'm not, saying that all Army leadership is the way forward at all. But one thing they absolutely do get right is they hire you because of your character. And that is it. They're one of the few Western armies who really don't care about your education. Like, they do not care about your education to be a leader in the British Army, which is completely different to what you see in North America, where having a degree is the prerequisite. In the British Army, they do not care. And if I can share one quick story, I'll never forget this. And my selection to go to Sandhurst, which is quite, there's a 2-day selection, and basically, if you pass that, you get invited to go back to a 4-day selection. So it's like a 6-day job interview, basically, to go and to just to attend Sandhurst, where they can kick you out on a whim. But I'll never forget the last day, and we were asked to do this. It's end of day 4 of the second phase. We're all very tired, etc. Asked to do this physical assault course individually. And there was this metal window. It was basically made out to be windows, maybe like 3 or 4 feet off the ground. There's this metal frame, and there's no padding or anything. It's going to hurt if you hit it. And you had to dive through head first. And then that was the start of the assault course, to dive through that head first, and then carry on, and they'd give you your time. And when I was ready to go, I was kind of pumped up, kind of nervous. And I remember turning to the side and seeing a lot of senior people, and I just guess I was seeing people by the entourage they had behind them, show up. They were obviously on, given a demonstration. So here I was, ready to prove my fitness level. And so I ran headfirst through this window, and I dived headfirst through this window, got through it, landed on the ground, kept on going. And then I turned around, I saw them in the corner of my eyes, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to really get a good time. And they all turned around and walked off, including the instructors who were assessing me. And they never came back. Not a single one of them cared about the time I was going to get on that focus. They did not care. They could train that. They knew they were going to have me for a year. They could get me to any physical shape. They cared that I had the moral courage and willpower and whatever it took to put myself in danger and dive through that window head first. And that is a tangible example of every single assessment I faced as trainers for your British Army officer. It was never about something they could train you. It was never about education. They could educate you. They could train you. It was about those characteristics, those kind of inner characteristics, which are so hard to train.
Where do you think those inner characteristics came from you? Like you said that in the military, that they naturally said like that you are a leader. What were some of those?
Well, yeah, where they came from. Yeah. And that's, I guess, nature versus nurture kind of question maybe as well. I don't know where they came from, and and I don't know if I believe in nature versus, like, I believe in it all, in it both, you know what I mean? Because, I believe in the growth mindset. I have a really bad habit of going into a fixed mindset, but I really try and force myself in the growth mindset, So that's kind of the nurture, I can grow and I grow. But there are some innate characteristics, and I don't know where it comes from. I just don't know. But I know for myself from a young age, I always found myself in leadership positions, whether it was like leadership of the soccer team as, like a 9-10-year-old or a teenager, whatever it was. I worked in a fast food chain and very soon became a leader when I was at high school. And I didn't want those leaders. Like, I didn't seek them out. I just happened to be put into those leadership positions. So I don't know what those characteristics are, but I'm pretty sure the basis of them all are, you want to be a servant. You want to lead because you want to make the environment better for those who lead, and that is it. And you're not there for your ego. You're not there for anything, and that, I think they all come down to that.
There's a interesting book. So we're all sitting in Canada right now for people that don't know. And it's actually by a Canadian author from McGill, or two authors. And I had the chance to present after her a few times and listen to her work. And it's called Leadership Made in Canada. And they basically do, and I'll let you know, it's a fairly academic read. So just take that for what it's worth. But what's interesting is they went out and they surveyed what they would call, I think, extraordinary leaders, but from all sectors, right? Nonprofit, corporate. And one of the things I found really interesting that I think ties into this conversation is they asked, and it was close to 400 of them, and pretty, deep surveys, and, kind of trying to really gather, like, how did you become a leader? How did you develop as a leader? And then ultimately make some recommendations, right, about how we keep that pipeline going in Canada. But one of the things that struck me as interesting is, and so they would have defined these people all had performed at a high level in leadership in whatever their respective area. And so would you consider yourself an accidental leader? In other words, and the definition kind of, and I'm butchering it a little bit, but it's this idea that, there was something, a calling and something you had to step into, and you made that decision to take that leap. Or would you consider yourself an innate leader? Just always someone who was kind of willing to just jump in and, was the captain of whatever rugby, hockey, soccer, biking, whatever team that was, or, president debate club or whatever it might be. And I thought that's a pretty easy answer, but I'm coming from a certain lens, clearly. But what do you think the ratio would be in terms of accidental to innate?
Ooh.
And I mean, it's not fair to throw this at you, but it's just, I was curious. And Emily, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I would think that, I would like to think that the higher percentage would be innate.
Okay, and what about you, Phil?
Well, I almost want to say, like, I don't see it as an either or. Like, I see that it's like an innate leader, but you kind of accidentally develop those innate things that have put you in that position. If that makes sense. So I'm kind of dodging. Maybe, and if that's not being fair, I'm kind of dodging.
I think you dodged. I think you dodged.
Okay, I dodged.
I think you're a British politician too.
No way. I am no.
No, and I know I've known you for half an hour. I know that is not true.
So 75% accidental. That's what I'll go.
Okay, so yeah, you would be closer to. Yeah, it was. I'll have to go back now because someone will fact check me and go, you're wrong. But it was certainly over 50% was accidental.
Wow.
And I remember being really surprised by that.
Yeah.
But then I thought, like, what's that great film where the rugby team goes down over the Andes and they and they somehow survive. They have to climb, anyways. But what they found in the story, in the movie, is a true story. The kind of formal captains of the team weren't necessarily the ones that got them through, and how people stood up, and what Phil was saying about followership and all that kind of stuff was just, but there were situations created where they stepped up, but they wouldn't have defined themselves as, I see myself as a leader. Part of that. So, and again, I mean, I'm in dangerous territory here because I'm kind of going off the back, but I love the servant leadership. So what I'd be curious about is, so how did that lead you to coaching and Royal Roads in particular? Given that we all have that same experience, right?
Yeah. How did that lead? Yeah. I mean, and there were a lot of experience and events between that story at Sanderson getting introduced to servant leadership to kind of where I'm now. I mean, it's, 17, 18 years ago. I mean, the servant leadership just got stronger and stronger, a bigger desire and a larger desire to help others. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in help as in, people need my help, but just to be there to serve others, and I served overseas and I saw, the extreme ends of, humanity, if you like, the good and the bad. And, it really just pushed me to just, well, in fact, I remember one day, actually, I'll never forget this moment. I looked down on the desert floor after, every moment is hard there, but this was a ridiculously hard 24 hours. And I looked down, I was like, I am never punching a ticket in life. Like whatever gift we've been given, I am going to maximize that as much as I can. Because I realized there were people who just are not going to be given those opportunities, and people I knew. But fast forward maybe 5-10 years from there, I ended up realizing I was living a life of comfort. You know what I mean? I was absolutely punching the ticket. And over the last 18 months made me reflect a lot on my desires and my passions and also my belief in myself, which I'd absolutely lost. And the coaching had always been, kind of something that I thought I'd be interested in and I thought I'd like to do. But I never realized how impactful it would have been until that first week. That first day, and I know myself and Emily have spoken about this, is just, and I don't know if you can share a similar experience today, but I was just awestruck at how I just knew I was in the right space. I just knew I had to be in that space with those people in that energy. And I've never felt that way, honestly, in 10, 15 years. And so that to me was like, oh wow, like you need to be here, and that was kind of the start of and then seeing the power of coaching for myself. I mean, I've spoken to Emily about this as well, but we talk about what are our priority relationships in our life, and we often don't put ourselves in any of that list, But for me, I had failed big time at the relationship which is most important in a sense, into the relationship with myself. I didn't know myself as much as I thought I knew myself, or if I did know myself, I'd forgotten who I was, etc. And so the self-awareness and the power of what coaching has able to help me do by being coached really helped me kind of believe and buy into just the strength and the power of coaching.
Oh, well said. Did you feel that same thing, Emily? When you
Yeah, I did 100%. Yeah. It's that feeling where, I think at any time, and just recently for me, I decided a couple of weeks ago to move back to New Brunswick. And it's that when you get that feeling of, you're in the right place, or that you're not in the right place, and having the courage to act on that. And I say that because, in that first day of residency in the Royal Roads program, it's like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think in so many different avenues in our life and areas in our life, if we kind of sit back and look and take that time to reflect inwardly of, how does this feel? Is this right? Am I punching my ticket? Am I feeling settled? Or am I really going after what my heart desires?
I find the Royal Roads experience, so anyone that's interested, they have a graduate certificate in executive coaching, and it's, they run a lot of cohorts. They run, and it's always loaded. And I had the fortune to run into it in 2004 or 5. I went through it, and I think it was one of maybe the first 5 cohorts. And there's only 13 of us in our cohort. And I'm still in touch with these people. You know what I mean? It's such a rich experience. And I believe, and this is a kind of a promo for Royal Roads, is what I loved about it was it had enough academic rigor, but it was taught by practitioners, like people that know coaching. And the first thing I recall was a coaching demonstration, you know what I mean? And then it was experiential and just really spoke to how I learn, I think, and maybe others, maybe you guys felt the same way. And, but certainly within, maybe the first 2 days, I was like, this is what I got to do. I got to set up a business and do this. And at the time, we had just got married, my wife and I, and found out we were pregnant and built a house. And this is not the right time, you know, if you're going to do the right thing, to start a coaching business. But the calling was too strong, you know. I just, you know, so I had to do it. But it sounds like we all had a similar experience.
Yeah.
And many of the faculty members are the same, you know. So you guys would be experiencing. So so how are you now both finding getting out and, you know, Phil, in your case, to the you know, into the world of coaching, and you know, how are you leveraging that and connecting that to leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm absolutely loving it, which is interesting because I knew I had to be in that space when I started the course. And as we went through self-discovery, and for those, you know, I mean, I was so surprised at the amount of self-discovery that this course was about, and the coaching was about being coached yourself. But, you know, it obviously can only lead others as far as you can lead yourself. So I am, you know, I enjoy it's not even the right word. I just feel so privileged to share that space with somebody and to touch somebody, you know, have that human interaction, and just to partner with somebody and be on that journey with them is such an honor and such a privilege, you know, and really truly it absolutely ties into the kind of servant leadership that, you know, you know, in my professional career was, you know, ingrained in me. So, you know, I see it as such an honor, and I just love being in the space. I thought I knew I'd enjoy it, but I thought I'd find it sometimes overwhelming and sometimes tiring, which of course it can be, anything can be. But I walk away from coaching calls feeling equally as coached and feeling equally as energized as the person I'm coaching. And that's just an amazing privilege, you know? And so how I'm tying that into leadership, and kind of before my coaching journey, I developed a number of leadership development courses based on my own experiences, kind of how to lead oneself, and then how to lead teams, or not how to, because there's no such thing as how to, but hey, this is what worked for me. This is what my experience is my life lessons, you know, from, you know, both combat to corporate, etc. And what I've actually done now, it's all kind of it was online, like a course supposed to take over 3 months, or 2 of them. But what I've done now is broken it down into the modules where I call them coaching minis. So when I partner with a client, they also get access to, you know, 15, 20 leadership development modules that they can take in their own time that kind of help them in their, you know, their development. And, you know, it's done at the same time with coaching. We might not discuss them during a coaching call, you know, they just do it as an addition. Sometimes things resonate with them. They want to bring it back and discuss it. So I'm really finding that may be a really good niche I'd like to tap into, because it fills my passion as well for kind of leadership.
Very cool. Are they like virtual modules?
Yeah, it's all virtual. Yeah. And ironically, I built this quiz was built all prior to COVID. It was almost like my hobby. I started like a few years ago. I always say like I built a kit car in the garage, you know, and just that's all I did with it though. And I didn't take it out for a drive. And then looking in the mirror over the last 18 months, I realized like, hey, Phil, you've got to own it and be vulnerable to owning it and take it for a drive, you know? So yeah, it's all built online using like learning management software. You know, like I'm lucky. My wife is a kind of a creative. She's, you know, media and marketing. She has her own company, so she does all the filming for me, etc. And I have these short online modules. Yeah, and it's all automated in terms of the registration for the clients, etc. So yeah, you know, it's super exciting, and really, I feel like I'm just getting started in where it can go.
And we should ask you right now, but like, where would people find that? Because someone listening to it is going, oh, let's give it to them right now and not make them wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, impactleadershipteam.com. That's where, that's the main site. From there, you can go to the training site and then, yeah, just play around.
So, Phil, I'm curious, when you kind of look back and reflect at your time, like at Sanders even, what was the most impactful kind of lesson in that you are still carrying with you today?
Wow. I mean, I'll go back to an experience we had at maybe week 7 of being there. So at week 7, we're asked to go on this 36, 40 hour kind of hike march in the mountains in Wales. you know, in the same terrain where they train the SAS, and we're carrying like 80 pounds of kit each, and we're asked to do various sort of assessments and tests on the way, no sleep and all that good stuff. And we did, there's 8 of us in my team, and it's all leaderless. So there's no assigned leader, and there's no instructors with you whatsoever. So there's no instructors. And then we did it horrendously bad because we were like, you know, we didn't return in time. We didn't give them all the information they needed, all that stuff. And I remember driving back to kind of our base. And I was like, oh, we're in for it. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this because this is so hard as it is. If they add on, you know, if they take away even more sleep and add on even more stuff, you know, and our instructor lined us up and they were like, hey, like, okay, what happened out there? Like, you 8 seemed to be pretty decent people to me. You know, and this was 7, 8 weeks in. So you didn't have the physical stamina. They hadn't trained you or anything like that. It was literally a challenge, a test of willpower and your mental strength, you know. Anyways, we explained what happened, and we just made some honest mistakes. And then she was like, okay, cool, no problem, fine. And walked away. And there was we were like the bottom of like 270 people. We had like, you know, we shamed the instructors, etc. They didn't care. We weren't penalized. We weren't punished. In fact, we were kind of celebrated by it. And it wasn't until later on, you know, like a long time later on, that I realized, you know, people can succeed, individuals can succeed, but the team they're part of can at the same time fail. And so, you know, all they cared about was teamwork. All they cared about how we were going to function when the chips were down. And if we stood there and blamed each other, if we looked for excuses, reasons, etc., and we didn't. We just were honest and open, and we spoke about how we bonded as a team, etc., you know. And so I think one of the biggest lessons that has really stuck for me is, you know, and in sports, team analogy is a good one. You know, you can be MVP, you can, you know, be the top scorer, but if your team loses, have you really succeeded? And there are too many leaders. There are too many leaders and too many people in every organization who walk home every night or whatever it is, go from their COVID room every night and say, you know what, and feel that they've succeeded, even if those around them have failed, even if their colleagues around them have failed. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons is we are all responsible for everyone else's success.
There's an exercise called Win All You Can to do with teams that you may be familiar with, and it's interesting. You'll have this conversation, right? And maybe not told as brilliantly as you just said, Phil, but you know, just about this idea of collective outcomes, you know, and you know, high score, does that necessarily mean and your team doesn't win? Does that, you know, if you think of sports, I'm going to be a real Canadian here talking about, you know, win the Stanley Cup, did you really win, right? And maybe you individually won a contract, but and everyone would be shaking their head, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, you know. And then you put them through this exercise where it seems like they should be pitted against each other, but they're just supposed to get the most points. And there's this way to do it, but people get competitive and they show you right there exactly what you're describing, Phil. Like in a, you know, and to create an experience. Like, remember we talked about collective outcomes and everyone said, oh yeah, I totally agree. And then they do the exact opposite. And it's just so funny because it's, I mean, like, I'd just be curious what you think about that, because it feels like it's just ingrained in us in some way, right? To be naturally competitive and feel like I'm winning if I'm beating you versus could we all win together?
I mean, it is ingrained, isn't it? Unfortunately, I mean, I have an 8 and 10-year-old, and I think about the education system where, you know, a lot of our growth happens, you know, as a child, and it's individual grades, you know, and you know, we just had the school reports a few weeks ago, and, you know, my son has struggled with literacy all his life, speech, you know, delays, etc. And so, you know, scores very poorly on the speech or literacy side compared to the provincial average or what it is, you know. So we're comparing an individual, saying this person's kind of below standard against this average. And it's ridiculous because actually the progress this kid has made is absolutely unbelievable. And we're so proud of him, you know, and it just shows that, like, we all have a different start line as well. Like, everyone has a different start line. So, you know, by giving everybody this saying everybody needs to be at this standard at this age, you're assuming they all have the same start line in September. And they absolutely did not have the same start line. you know, it makes you go back to when I was at school, and you know, if you got an ace, you know, I don't know what the grades, I don't know how we call grades in Canada. I went to high school in the UK, but you know, if you got an A star, you'll give them a certificate at the end of the year or whatever it is. What about the person who got a C minus, you know, but came from like an F level and just worked so hard, you know, to get that. I just think unfortunately, it is ingrained in us, and it's a learned behavior. And then we become adults and we're trying to help folks, including ourselves, unlearn it. And that's the challenge.
Yeah, it becomes very ingrained as to, oh, I'm an honor student or not. When it's like, wait a minute, what's an honor student even mean?
Yeah. And who really cares? I mean, you know, it doesn't really matter, you know, and it's, and I have maybe a bit of a skewed view on this. But I think we overrate education, you know, and I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, the academic side of our society is so important, the research that comes out there, etc. But I think we overrate what education means. And we think that if someone is educated, then they obviously have high morals and high ethics, high values. An amazing example that really, really frustrated me recently was applying for passports, British passports for my kids. And you had to get the photograph signed by, you know, like by somebody who is apparently trustworthy and is going to give, and they gave a list in UK, they gave me a list. Okay, I'd be a doctor, you know, whatever. And it's basically that message is saying that, okay, so if you're maybe a blue collar worker, you don't have the ethical values to sign this, which is, it's so wrong, you know, and it really frustrates me. So unfortunately, I think we do, it's ironic because, I mean, education is so important. Don't be wrong. I mean, I'm a massive believer education is the only thing that's going to help this world become better. But there's a point where we place too much emphasis on education at the, you know, the kind of post-high school level.
Oh man, I couldn't. Yeah, wow, we're cut from the same cloth. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's also like, how do people learn, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and what does that really, you know, when we talk about standards, what that really speaks to one type of learner. From my, I'm married to an educator, so kind of, and her perspective would be exactly that. And she would actually totally line up with what you're thinking, Phil, around, you know, let's celebrate where someone's come from. And she's in kindergarten.
Yeah.
There's some kids that come to kindergarten that hold the book upside down because they've just for whatever reason never had that experience. And then other kids are reading Harry Potter, you know, and so they're starting at very different places. So, so what are, Emily, what are some takeaways from this conversation for you?
What are some takeaways? You know, I think back to your story of your time at Sanders and the ability to just make the jump, and that nobody cared after. Your instructors kind of turned their back, and just how important it is to, are you going to take action? That's my takeaway. Dave?
I love it. Man, there's quite a few. Let me think about like well, it's interesting how there's these moments that you're describing, Phil, that you've gone through, and just how it sparked new learning. And there's a whole bunch of them that you're describing to us. And I know there's many more. And I think what I was thinking, and I was kind of looking at the bookshelf behind you, I was thinking, has Phil written a book? And if he hasn't, when's he going to do it? Is that something you're interested in? Because you know, I think I'm really just attracted to the storytelling you do and how you do it. And it's a really powerful way for me to learn. So I appreciate that in someone, you know, and hearing someone tell these great stories, you know. And I'm guessing, and Emily would know this much better than I would, but there's probably many more there.
There's many more. The book conversation has certainly been had, I know, between he and I. Okay. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's amazingly uncomfortable, you know, to having to sit here and hear you say that, because, you know, it goes down to that whole imposter syndrome, that self-belief. And, you know, it's like you mentioned in writing a book, and I'm like, oh, well, I've got nothing to talk about. And it's honestly, it's only through my coaching experiences of being coached myself. And I think I can say that I'm very fortunate to be coached by Emily, and she has helped me on my learning journey. And I have a shoebox actually, it's in the corner of this room, and it's all my memories and letters from home and maps and everything from Afghanistan. And that shoebox literally was unopened for over 10 years. it was unopened for a lot of reasons. And it's now here, and I've unpacked it and I've read things, and I'm now starting to realize that, you know what, Phil, yeah, like own your stories, It's okay to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's so much power in that. I remember hearing a speaker where it was an ICF conference, an International Coach Veteran Conference in Long Beach, California, like 15 years ago. And she tells a story about she was capturing stories of victims of war. It actually kind of very ties into your background, Phil. And she was getting them to share their stories to make sure the document, and primarily women too that had been victims. And then one person asked her to tell her story, and then she leads into her story about her father being a pilot for Saddam Hussein, and they called him Uncle Saddam, and she starts sharing the story, and her message was, share, we all have a story to share.
Yeah.
She was hiding from her story, but I remember sitting there after just thinking, and that's a profound story. But we all have stories, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
they need to be told.
I'm hoping that that Phil asks you to coach him through getting his book out, or you remind him that, or you create some accountability around that.
It's going to be the latter day. Let's be honest. Emily's going to remind me of that. Whether I want it or not, I'm getting coached with it. I already know.
I love it.
Yeah. Phil, how else can all of the listeners get in contact with you? I know you said the website for Impact Leadership, but how else?
Yeah, and thanks. And I'm on LinkedIn just under my own name, Phil Jewell. I'm on Instagram. I hesitate because I'm not very good on Instagram, but I am on there on impact.leadership. And that's where you can find me. I mean, this day and age, if people want to find me, I'm sure they can, and certainly appreciate this conversation today. I mentioned that when I coach a client, I feel really energized, and I absolutely I feel like really energized, and that's a good way to roll into the weekend.
Have you already done your workout today?
Emily, I have already done my workout. So can I share that, Emily? That's a quick story. Ever got time? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, the last 18 months, like fitness as me has always been a very foundation. I always work out for my mental health, and over the last 18 months, it's just been a struggle. Motivation has been, at the negative at best, etc. And last week I was on I've been coached by Emily, and I had all these things that I thought I wanted to be coached on, and ultimately we came down to physical fitness, which was tying into lots of bigger things. And then that coaching call led to me walking into a gym the next day and basically handing over my credit card and saying, sign me up. So basically that was 9 days ago. In 9 days, I've been to the gym every day but Sunday. I've hired a personal trainer. I've had 2 personal training sessions. We have a 6-month plan. And, I only share that because it just shows the power of coaching. I know what I should have done. I know I should have gone to the gym, but I was not going to make that until kind of somebody held me capable, which was Emily. So that's why Emily asked me to do my workout. I did it this morning. I feel awesome. I've been sending the selfies, or not selfies of my feet from the gym. That's what we send the
You're probably pretty sore too.
I am so sore. My wife is just like laughing at me. So you're ridiculous.
Well, we've all got our workouts in today. Even Dave got a workout in before he came here, and
nice.
Forgot to put my deodorant on.
Is that why you're in a separate room though? Really? Because of Joe?
I just figured that out. That's probably why.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
it's working fine.
She could have clicked on something to make it work. She's like, Dave, I think you gotta go to the other room.
Yeah, not happening. Not happening.
So, just so nice to meet you. I feel like we're pretty. We're in the same worlds. We're in the same part of the world physically too. So we definitely got to. I hope to connect with you at another time, Phil, for sure. And then we're gonna have you on when around the book launch for sure, if not sooner.
Awesome.
And then and we're gonna get Genevieve to do that. What do you call this? The outtake or
the outtake? Yeah, sometimes when you do it, it's called the outtake. Sometimes, so it's all of our social information. So if you're looking to learn more about the podcast, you can head over to boilingpointpodcast.com. You can see all of our conversations there. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And of course, you can listen on your favorite podcast platform. You can subscribe, you can like it, you can leave us a review. And if you want to see the video, you can head to YouTube or Facebook.
Thanks, Genevieve.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
No problem. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Okay. See you, Phil.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Boiling Point Podcast. Remember to subscribe and rate our podcast on your favorite listening platform. To find out more, head to our website at boilingpointpodcast.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. To find out more about Dave Vale's work, head over to visioncoachinginc.com. Thanks for listening, and make sure to check out our next conversation.